Hi, Andrew from Sachs, and welcome to video number 5 in our 7-video sequence on leadership, with an emphasis on 3 particular things: well-being, productivity, and development and growth. And this is the first of the 2 videos on productivity, and this one will be emphasizing role clarity. People at work need role clarity. I think we all get that. And one of the things that is a really important question is, do they have clarity about the purpose of the organization? There's a trend in thinking in respect of this, which is taking place across the world right now. And the trend in thinking is away from tasks as a way of defining what we do to outcomes. Role clarity can exist at a range of different levels. It can exist at the organizational level. And you see here that we talk about these things called real-world outcomes. The real-world outcomes reflect a change of thinking about what makes productivity for organizations and what makes clarity for organizations. People used to think in terms of what you do, what are the tasks that you undertake. But of course, it makes more sense to think about what you need to achieve. What are the outcomes that you need to achieve? So if you think of the outcomes of an organization, internal outcomes might be things like profit. It could be things like growth. It could be things like the quality of the products that we produce. And then there are external measures, things like the satisfaction of our customers, things like our reputation, and things like the productivity of our web resources, those kinds of things. All of those things can be outcomes. Now, the important thing about thinking in terms of outcomes is that it tends to simplify our perspective on accountability. In other words, if I know that my organization is set up to achieve 5 outcomes, and here are, let's say, 20 measures that we're going to use to assess whether we're achieving these outcomes, then you get away from the problem that so many organizations have, which is that they have this vague description of what their strategy is. No, this year, here are the outcomes that we're going to pursue, and here is how we're going to measure them. Now, people get a lot of satisfaction from that by virtue of the fact that they realize whether we're winning or losing. This is one of the reasons why sport is popular all over the world, because in sport, you in general leave the match knowing that you won, lost, or drew. People like to know whether they go home each week as winners. Now, once you've identified the outcomes at an organizational level, then it gives you an opportunity to look at the outcomes at a group level or at a division level or a department, whatever you call it, and then a branch or business unit level, and then finally down to the individual level. Now, research in this area, particularly the research of 2 guys by the name of Locke and Latham, who became the gurus of goal theory, says that if you have too many outcomes, that actually leads to ambiguity. And I think if a job can't be described in, let's say, 4 to a maximum of 7 outcomes, then the job's wrongly constructed. So, for instance, at Sachs, our consulting staff really have 4 outcomes to achieve. The first is happy colleagues, and we can measure that through things like 360-degree feedback or simply informal feedback from colleagues. Happy colleagues. Second is happy customers. We're in a customer service business, so if our customers are not happy, that's not good for either the well-being of our staff or the productivity of our staff. The third is that people must create work of a certain quality, and that's typically assessed through ratings of leaders. And the fourth is really that they need to achieve in terms of delivery, which is to say, get through the volume and quality of work that's necessary. So that makes a really simple job description, doesn't it? 4 things: happy colleagues, happy customers, quality of work, and commercial contribution. And if a person's doing those 4 things, then great, everyone's happy. And interestingly, when we have examples of where people haven't quite come up to the mark, it's always in one of those 4 areas. Across the world, people are taking the view that jobs can be simplified in this way. Imagine a job description of 1 page. This is what it looks like. It's a thing called an outcome-based job definition, where you define the outcomes that a job needs to achieve, so those 4 to 7 things, and how they'll be measured, and then the skills that are necessary to deliver the outcomes, the experience or qualifications necessary, and then the attributes, the style, behaviours, approach, etc., to achieve those outcomes. All of that creates the possibility for an accountability framework which is really clear and which guides people's behaviours and performance. I think very few organisations have this. It's a wonderful opportunity for organisations to move away from task definition. So a task definition is, okay, you've got to write a report, and the report, you need to sit down at a computer and you need to speak to stakeholders and you need to get on the web and do some research and those kinds of things. They're all tasks. But the outcomes might be things like The people who receive this report are happy with it. Another outcome might be something like it changes something in the real world. It influences people's behaviour. Another outcome might be that it complies with some regulatory framework or something like that. But external or internal measurable outcomes are really powerful for accountability. So imagine accountability at the organisational level. You've defined what the organisation needs to achieve and how you'll assess that, right down through the various business units to the individual. That's an opportunity to optimise accountability. Many organisations are very worried about staff working from home. I'm convinced that in many cases it's because they think they need to see those employees in order to judge whether they're working or not. If you've got an outcomes framework and a measurable outcomes framework, then doesn't matter if they're doing the job from planet Mars. As long as they're achieving their outcomes, they're a productive staff member. Now in this video I've sort of foreshadowed where we're going with this question of performance development, because I've said that measurable outcomes in an accountability framework is a great way for an organisation to coordinate its activities, but also to create this sense of an accountability climate within an organisation. Join us for the next video to understand a little bit more about what kinds of leadership skills are necessary to create this kind of an environment and how we actually make that accountability happen.